Hello viewers and welcome to yet another Warhammer 40,000 Conquest video production. My name is Mitch and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today I'm pleased to present a somewhat unusual video in which a gentleman named Justin Leisner introduces a 3-player variant for Conquest LCG. Personally, when it comes to gaming, I've traditionally been entirely opposed to house rules or any unofficial methods of play, but I found his multiplayer alternative to conventional gameplay exceptionally intuitive, and could quite literally see some approximation of this eventually becoming an officially endorsed method of play at some point in our game's development. So please consider this video with an open mind, and you're encouraged to leave thoughts, concerns, and feedback in the comments section below. So, if you enjoyed this video, remember to hit the like button, ensure you're subscribed, and you're always encouraged to share, because the more engagement this video receives, the more viewers are reached, and ever the broader you help grow our Conquest community. But, with our introduction aside, I'm pleased to bring you a Conquest LCG game variant developed by Justin Leisner. Alright, well, thank you very much for joining me today, Justin, but before you introduce your gameplay variant, why don't you just tell our viewers who you are and a little bit about your community involvement.
Well, like Mitch said, my name is Justin Leisner. I used to play a lot of Conquest. I'd go to lots of events. At the moment, all I really do is just make online inputs, talk to people I know about it, discussions and such. Don't really, my off nights don't match the local area players out here, so I have not been able to really play much, and I don't frequent Octagon. But in this case, I have been putting a lot more thought into this 3-player Conquest variant.
Well, I guess speaking for myself, I'm the kind of player that hates house rules. I don't really care for anything unofficial. The idea of a gameplay variant kind of put me off at first. When you first approached me with this idea, I was ready to disregard it entirely until you kind of walked me through it. Consider me very impressed. It feels very intuitive, but why don't you just kind of explain a little bit about why you came up with this in the first place?
Well, what happened was we had I think a League Kit event, and the Chicago area was having one also, and then there was another, I think, Netrunner event somewhere. So it ended up only a few people showed up. So we were thinking about just finding some way to do a 3-player game, just instead of just doing a boring round robin, just kind of mix it up. And I started thinking up some ideas from that. We ended up doing 4-player because a 4th player showed up, and we ended up just doing round robins. But since then, I've always had this thing nagging at me in the back of the head, and now that I don't really play or anything, I have nothing else eating my time, I decided to put some more time into it.
Sure.
But the key to this whole variant is the planet layout. Once we figured that out, a lot of things started to fall into place.
Right. So I guess why don't you describe the basic structure here? So it's a 3-player variant. Like I said, it's pretty intuitive. You're not really changing the way that the rules work, but it's definitely a non-conventional layout here.
Right. There's a couple things you have to change to accommodate for the game or to make certain things not ridiculously overpowered. But for the most part, many of the same mechanics you already know work normally.
Sure.
Which is what makes it so, kind of easy to flow.
Well, I guess, how does a player start? So you shuffle up the planet cards, and then how do you deal them out? How do you assemble this, 3-spoke thing?
What would happen is you can go about this, there's I'll list some optional things you can do after I'm done. But for the most part, you just shuffle up all 10 planets, You're going to use all 10 of them. The order you deal them out is not really that important. So typically what we do is we make the center planet first. So you drop that one face up, and then you're just going to lay out 3 in 3 different directions, which is between the seats of each player.
Right.
So if there's a player seated here, he'll have 2 arms on his left and right, and then the center planet in the middle. And each player will have the same thing in front of them. The innermost planet on each arm is your face-down planet to start with. Much like regular Conquest, those will reveal, as each turn passes until they're all face-up.
Sure.
So when I was working on this, I wanted it to very much use the mechanics that are already in the game. I did not want to have to change anything if I could avoid it.
Yeah, you wanted it to still feel and play like Conquest.
Right. Like, you could easily lay out, all the planets and then just say, oh, where's your Warlord going? And then, write a number on a piece of paper and then reveal it.
Yeah.
But I would rather use the dial. And this way allows you to use the dial. So very simply, obviously, if I was seated here, if I was this Swarm Lord, to me, planet 1 is over here.
Okay.
It just goes left to right, face-up planets. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You skip the face-down planets. They're just there as reminders.
Sure. And you're still deploying units conventionally.
Right. So if I dialed planet 1, Swarm Warlord would obviously go over here.
Right.
This is my planet 1. However, to Baharov, that's his planet 5.
Right.
So everybody has their own dial. So the only major difference here is that my 1 is not your 1. His 1 is not his 1. In
Sure.
a 2-player game, 1 is 1, 2 is 2. They're all the same.
Right, right. But it should be abundantly clear for each player.
But, that's very simple to see your perspective, left to right. You can't really mess that up. Now, let's say the Swarm Lord is first player. So the first planet on his left, his planet 1 is going to be the first planet. Funny enough, I don't actually have a first planet token. So I'm just going to place the dial on it.
Okay.
So that's planet 1. So you go through a normal turn, and I'll go more in depth on each phase as I go. I just want to cover this. After all deploying and everything, and you do your committing, you have your first battle planet, just as you normally would in any other game. Always a battle at the first planet. And then you will circle around, and you will kind of corkscrew inwards. And that is the order that you will conduct your command.
Sure.
And your battles.
So it would be like Barlas, and then to the right we've got Farron, and then Karnath.
I suppose the shortcut to think about it is it's going to be, starting from the first player, his planet 1, and then everybody's planet 1, and then his planet 2, and then everybody else's planet 2, and then the second planet.
Yeah, that makes it pretty simple. And
you can easily, just kind of circle it like this.
Yeah.
Right, until you get to the center.
Right. And then I assume the same thing goes for initiative then. You kind of pass the token to your left, and players...
Right. Initiative player has initiative over, as he normally would. Warlords still give you initiative over people without warlords. If you both, obviously the initiative is kind of, the token is the tiebreaker still if you both have a warlord or neither have a warlord. The only major difference is if these two players both have their warlord, say they're fighting here, and neither of them have the token, the Swarm Lord is the initiative player.
Sure.
The player to his left has initiative over the other player.
Right, so it's basically clockwise.
Right. If you are next in line to get the token, then you're going to have initiative over the person that's farther away.
Great.
Pretty straightforward on that. There can be, because of this, if you are all 3 in the center, and you're fighting in the center, it is possible to kind of go out of order. Initiative is not like I'm first, and then it goes clockwise. So Swarmlord would obviously go first. He's got the token and the Warlord.
Right.
Right? But let's say Baharoth just has units. Yeah. I got some units here. Let's say he's just got, a couple guys.
Sure.
So even though he's next in the initiative line, he doesn't have the Warlord, so Ragnar is actually second to this battle. And then the Eldar player.
And then I suppose if no one had any warlords at, say, a first... Well, I guess if it was at a first planet, it would still be the player with the initiative token or doing the clockwise thing.
But even so, there could be future mechanics. They maybe start battles without warlords.
Right.
And that would apply. Right. So that actually just, if nobody had a warlord, it would just go initiative player and then in a circle.
Yeah.
So that all elegantly kind of solves itself. And again, back with the dial. So let's say these two, we had a battle here. Let's say the Swarmlord wins, whatever the case is. He scores the planet as normal. It remains. You finish out all the other battles as you normally would. And then the first planet token and initiative token, passes, right? So it passes initiative over here. And it now becomes his first planet is now the first planet.
So it's still only one planet being captured each turn.
Right. You're working from the outside in, and you're just going around.
Okay.
Right? Now, having left this arm, the face-down planet here turns over.
Okay.
Right? So there's still, for this player, there's still 5 planets.
Right.
And this player has 5 planets, and this player has 5 planets. In some sense, you're still playing a 2-player game in some sense of the word.
Yeah.
But you're fighting on 2 fronts. Now, over here, as we get into the deploy phase, this is the really the only adjustment that is you need to know that I had to change. Just because of orientation, it would be a mess if, Ragnar's got units out. And then Baharoth's got units here. Oh, well, the Swarmlord wants units too. Well, where's he going to put them?
Right.
And what if our sleeves are the same? What if we're the same faction? You don't want to get all these cards all confused. So I've just said that whatever the opposite arm of the board is on the planets, you cannot interfere with that.
Okay.
You can't deploy units there. You can't play events there. Anything you do play does not affect anything there.
Right. So at that point, it's basically just up to Baharoth and Ragnar.
For all intents and purposes, in a 2-player game, you take 3 planets and you throw them out. These are those 3 planets you threw out.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
You have nothing to do with these. The only thing you need to do is pay attention, when somebody else is collecting these colors, because you might have to block them. Or else, the game's over. Speaking of which, the planet color win condition is exactly the same. You still need 3 of a color. Because ultimately, you're still going to fight over 7 planets.
Right.
Right? So there's no need to adjust that.
Sure.
You may decide at some point that it might be a little unfair if you're randomly turning these over, and this player, say both of the tricolor planets are over here. Well, he doesn't have access to those. If you find that to be unfair, and it happens, you can make a simple adjustment. You can take one of the 2 tricolor planets, and you can just have an optional rule where it just starts in the center all the time.
Right.
Everybody has that option to get that, right? And you can even say take one of the single color icons and have each one of those start on the outside on each arm.
Sure. I mean, it's definitely...
So there's an extra one. But that would kind of normalize the game pace in some sense.
Right.
However, for this, I'm just going basic, just, random is fine. So anyway, we're over here. You don't want to be able to play stuff there. It's a big mess, so you just can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't play a drop pod assault here, even though, well, if the battle was over here, Ragnar cannot play a drop pod assault in this battle.
Right.
Even though it says target a planet where a battle is taking place. All right. You just need to insert the words a battle where, it's on your line. It can't be over here.
I mean, spatially, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. If you wanted to somehow, be able to have everybody fighting on every planet, it would be a giant mess.
Sure.
And in trying to play all three sides by myself, it was already a huge mental drain. Like, I was trying to play all three sides to get some situations to occur.
Right.
And trying to make the best decisions for each side. And I had to complete the game over like 2 or 3 days because it's so draining.
Right. Well, I guess, what about cards like Warp Storm that target any player's HQ? Does that work as one would expect?
I'm glad you asked that. So, obviously, the main reason that we had to institute this rule is because Warp Storm would be absurd if you could just nuke the other two players' armies.
Yes.
So, but things like that and Doom still target HQs. And this is especially true for the case of Doom. If they just finished a battle over here and all their units are hanging out at HQ and your guys are all out because they just completed this, and you Doom, you're going to wipe their armies. And you're probably not going to suffer much of anything.
Right.
So you might have to go through card by card, figure this out. But in cases where things target all HQs, you're going to have to limit it to a 2-player perspective.
Sure.
Whereas one of those players is always you, and then you choose one of the other ones.
Right. And again, I think that's intuitive enough. And certain cards like Warp Storm just specify one target HQ.
Right. That one was still fine. I had a problem with Doom when I was doing this. And so things like that. The normal pace of the game is these cards were designed in mind where you are taking some of the burden. You have some risk.
Right.
It might still be a good idea for you to do it, but you might suffer losses as well.
Right.
But in the event where you're suffering very minimal or no losses and you're obliterating the other two players, it's not healthy.
Right. Well, I guess while we're on the subject, are there any other problem cards that players should just be aware of if they try out this variant and then make some uncomfortable discovery?
If you just apply, there's a lot of the wording in the game is already open to if they ever introduced a multiplayer variant where everybody can go everywhere. A lot of things say each player, all players, opponents.
Right. As
You're
opposed
just
to
gonna have to use sense. Like, I don't want to go through every card and make a list for every card that has this kind of wording and say this means you and one opponent. This means, target army. This, target opponent's side. Like if he has a tactical squad and you want to attack, whatever unit over here, but you want to trigger the AoE, the AoE itself, by its own definition, does damage to each enemy unit at the planet.
Right.
Oh, this is too harsh. It's too much. You can't just have a bloodthirster swing and just destroy 2 entire armies.
Right.
So you're just going to have to say, well, it's AoE against one of the armies.
Sure. And that's, again, a simple enough adjustment.
Right. And I did discover through playing that as long as all players aren't playing, as long as somebody just doesn't give up and decide to play Kingmaker, they will balance out. Like, if this guy takes a devastating hit, and now Ragnar becomes the imminent threat, they're going to gang up on him. And they're going to rebalance the game out that way.
Sure.
At some point, it becomes too late, etc. But I find it to be very healthy, and it's a nice having like shifting, changing alliances. Like, oh, we just crushed him, but now Swarm Lord's a threat, so now they gang up on you. And even though, they both can't just have units over here because Ragnar can't deploy over here. They can both deploy units just on against you, and they can put their warlords over here and try to catch you if they really want to.
Definitely.
If you're that big of a threat, they can, put themselves over here as much as they can to try to kill you, kill your armies, whatever they need to do.
Sure, and everybody's still playing for the same, planet type icon victory condition, so...
Right.
Well, I guess kind of the obvious question, something that you were working on recently, is how exactly does, Warlord bloodying and destruction work?
Right. So I had a major problem with the typical Warlord kill rules because, like I said, I wanted to leave as many rules as I could alone. But what happens is, if somebody loses their Warlord, when I was thinking about this, well, okay, his Warlord's dead. So is the whole player dead? So if we just wiped out that whole player, just took all his things and it was gone, there's this huge vacuum. There's nobody to contest the Swarmlord over here, and there's nobody to contest Ragnar over here. So he's going to auto-win these planets, and he's going to automatically win these planets.
Sure.
Someone's just going to win. There's not really much effort at this point. All they have to do is just fight each other if there's something over here, and that's it. So, and you can't decide, you can't just remove some planets or say, well, now we can deploy anywhere. It's still kind of awkward. So removing the whole player just stuck out to me as an immediately terrible idea. So I said, okay, well, he stays. He just doesn't have a warlord. All his stuff's dead, or his warlord's dead, but all his stuff is still out. He still gains resources. He can still win command. He just doesn't have a warlord, which hurts him. I mean, he can't start a battle somewhere because he has a warlord. Right. He can't automatically win command. If he had Daka, he can't play that. So that's fine. And then I thought about, well, maybe if he kills somebody else's warlord, maybe his warlord can come back. Because what would happen is, if you don't have a warlord here, and let's say Ragnar dies, well, by the normal rules, I'm the only one left with the warlord over here. So I win. But what that leads to is, well, the Eldar player can actually bully both players. Because if they kill your warlord, if you get your warlord killed, the other player wins. So, big mess. There's no way I could make it work. It just made really negative, play, situations.
Sure.
So what I ultimately decided is, your warlord's dead. That's fine. You keep playing. Anybody whose warlord dies, they keep playing. There is no win condition for killing warlords.
Well, I guess, yet again, that's something else that seems intuitive enough. It still gives you plenty of incentive to protect your warlord, and then once it's gone, you're, you've got a significant drawback.
And that is exactly what I found when I was testing it that way, is the players that did lose their warlords were at a pretty good handicap.
Right.
Unless by that point they had already raked in tons of money, had tons of units. And even if they did, they still have some disadvantage because they can't win initiative. If it comes down to a final battle, they know they're not going first. And if somebody has a good AoE hit, they're going to take out a lot of their units.
Sure.
So you are still at a disadvantage. And often I found them trying to kill other players' warlords to even it out, which totally fine. So that was a major hurdle. It took a little while to kind of iron out. If anyone discovers anything that works better, by all means.
Yeah. Well, I guess, are there any other, little pieces of ruling you feel worth, sharing or throwing out there?
We tried allowing, if you won, say, the planet, I don't remember what planet it is, either this one, Farron.
Mm-hmm.
this has the battle ability where you can route a target non-warlord unit.
Sure.
We tried a variant where triggering the battle abilities off the planets allowed you to target units on the opposite end.
Okay.
It wasn't the worst thing. You still were able to, you could influence somebody else's battle.
Sure.
So,
It
but
it does.
like in some cases it was okay, but I still think it's too much interference.
Yeah.
Like I just think any interference is too much.
I do think it strays from the theme somewhat. Earlier you happened to mention that card Daka, which is
Right.
1 damage to each unit in play. How would you personally resolve that effect? Like, would it just be you affect the 5 planets you have,
I would have it like everything else. I would just blanket say it affects obviously your own units,
Right.
and then you're going to choose one of the other players,
Okay.
and it's going to affect. So it's going to affect. If I make it fall in line with everything else that just says all,
Sure.
what it'll be is it's going to affect all my guys,
Right.
and it's going to affect all of another player's units
Sure.
because it's between me and you.
Right.
Now, I have not at this point been able to do enough testing on things of this effect to decide if it would be better to say it affects only the planets
Sure.
and HQs between me and one player,
Right.
which would be limited to the center and then these 3. And then it would affect all of me and your units in these 4 planets, or 3 as it would be, and then our HQs.
Right. I guess just an alternative I was thinking of is like your entire firing arc. The 5 planets you could potentially commit a Warlord to, but again, all of this is going to take a little bit of refinement.
Yeah, you could also say that. You could say it hits, like I said, the array in front of me, and it's just going to hit your units and then your HQs.
Right.
So it is things like that that you're going to have to make those decisions, and you're just going to have to find out, because they're going to keep releasing cards, and if you or you have some other friends and you decide you like playing this way, you're going to have to make those decisions as the cards come out.
Sure.
Like I said, you just find out what's the healthier way. You don't want to throw the game out of balance. You don't want to say, oh, we did this and that just kills everything and now I can't do anything. Obviously, it's a bad thing to have in the game then.
Yeah. Well, I guess just kind of before I have you run through like the framework of, just multiple HQ phases just to demonstrate how the planets whittle away eventually down to 1, any more like just rules, thoughts worth throwing out there?
There's nothing coming to me at time. I think you have most everything there is, or everything there is.
Sure.
To be able to actually function. Like I said, the biggest problem is just going to be those events that affect everything, and you're going to have to narrow it down.
Right. Well, and
or you can just say, you know what, everything affects everything. Go with it. See how it goes.
Yeah. I mean, and, definitely if people experiment with this variant, let us know in the comments what your experiences are or what suggestions you have. Obviously this isn't an official variant, at least not yet, and I'm sure, Justin, you're open to feedback.
Oh, absolutely.
So
I figured part of the reason I want to do this is because I'm now at the point where everything can work. It just needs that amount of, that high number of games played to be able to see what works best.
Right.
And I don't have the time or the people, because I have little time and I have no people to be able to do this by myself at this point.
Right. Well, and like you said, just trying to go through a 3-player game yourself, it must be an absolute nightmare to...
Right. But I know from experience that there's plenty of times where you're playing and you always have that one extra person. And you can do this and you can all play.
Sure. Well, I guess just to kind of end our video, our demonstration here, why don't you just kind of run through the framework of, not combat, but actually like the HQ phase, moving the first planet token. revealing new
like
planets.
You said before, so we'll say Swarmlord's initiative player, so this is the first planet.
Right.
Continue through all the phases, battle happens, this planet gets won, somebody scores it or it goes away.
Sure.
HQ phase, you collect your resources, draw cards, flip over this planet,
Okay.
move this to the next one.
Sure.
On the outside, the next outermost on the next
spoke.
Clockwise.
Yeah.
Right, clockwise arm. If you want to, you can think of this like a galaxy, and these are the arms for the spiral. You could spiral them out if it makes you feel better.
Right.
It'll be awkward, but you can do it. Right, so at this point, next turn, same thing. This battle gets won. This planet flips. Should use my outer arm so I don't block the camera there.
Oh, you're good.
And then it moves over here.
Sure.
Now notice, at this point, you're still saying, okay, we do a battle here, then we do a battle here, and then here, and then here, and then here, 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 here. And it goes the same order for command. You can do command here, 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 here.
Right.
Initially, we did it where it just went down the line, and then we did this, this arm, and this whole arm, and then the center. And while that makes it go quicker, it's not particularly fair.
Sure.
Doing 1, 1, 1, 1.
I mean, I think this makes the most sense.
Yeah. And then again, this one gets scored by somebody. New planet is out. And then you move this to the next outside one. And then that one goes over here. That one goes over here. This one over here. Gone. 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 Last planet.
Right. Well,
now, as noted before, since there's no Warlord win, the only way the game's going to end before this point is if somebody scores 3 colors.
Right.
And at this point, this is the only planet where you can have the 3-way battle. But because the center planet is revealed from the beginning of the game, you can always have 3-player fights here.
Yeah.
So in the event where at some point in the game, if these 2 players go here and they start a battle because they have warlords, right? If Ragnar has units present, they're going to participate in the battle.
Right.
Right? Figure out initiative, go through the fight. Same as anything else, the battle continues until there's only one side present. Nothing different about that.
Sure. I mean, it's all pretty intuitive so far.
Right. Blam, blam. There was one other thing, which is specifically why I've been using Baharoth for this. Mobile. And other things that would move units. So adjacently, so if Baharoth was there, Ragnar's here in the center, and
yeah.
put Swarm over here. Alright. Command phase is over. I have mobile. So let me slide this. So Baharoth's mobile, obviously he could move here. It's adjacent.
Right.
This is face down, so it's not there.
Right.
So he can actually go here.
Yeah. And again,
right.
Makes perfect sense.
Perfect sense, but there's always somebody who's like, well, what about this one? I'm like,
right.
Look, you can just hide the damn planet, all right? But it's not there.
Sure.
Whatever. Well, same thing. Wild Rider Squadron. Middle of combat action, move over, same deal.
Right.
The Swarmlord commits to the center planet. He makes his tokens out here.
Sure.
Because these aren't, they're not existent yet. It's all very straightforward. Like I said, the real difficulty is those cards that have blanket effects. You're probably going to have to minimize them. However, if you're all here and you warp storm here, well, maybe it should affect everybody, and you're going to have to decide that.
Right. Well, Justin, I thank you very much for taking the time to introduce this variant to the community. I guess any closing thoughts or any, requests for feedback or anything else you feel like throwing out there?
I've had people very much like playing it this way. Um, they just like I know at least a few guys where I, they're present at the game shop and they're playing Netrunner or Thrones or something, and I'd say, hey, you want to play Conquest? I'm like, oh well, I kind of rather play Thrones or something right now. It's Conquest, not really my main game. I kind of turned off for whatever reason.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, well, can I since you play Thrones and Conquest and you play Netrunner Conquest, so neither of you have someone to play with. Could I ask you guys to try this 3-player thing with me that I'm working on? Yeah, okay, sure. And like some of these guys, like they really like it.
Sure. I mean,
like, wow, this is way more fun. Like they got stuff over here, guys over here. It's like and like I get it. I was playing with them. I'm like, this is more fun because you're typically worried about like you have to remember because of the way that the planets revolve. If you might think, oh, this is planet 1, so I'm going to go fight for this, but I also want to set up for this planet because that's the next one. Well, it's not the next one. The next one is over here, and then it's going to be over here.
Right.
Right? So you actually have to, you have to have a little more awareness in what colors each player has.
Yeah.
Because if you don't defend somebody, because Swarmlord might already have a red. And then he might fight Ragnar over here, and he wins this planet, and he gets a second red. Now we're coming over here to fight a Karnath, and that's another red. And if Baharoth didn't prepare to defend with anything, and Swarmlord has some units here, he's going to sneak that, and Baharoth messes up and goes over here. Oh, well, I just won. I have 3 red now.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that's all the more reason not to gang up on one specific player if it leaves your opponent not in a position where they can defend against a victory.
Like, you don't want to play this with the people who say, and I don't generally like playing board games with people who have memory of game, like history.
Sure.
Like when they say, oh, well, last game you killed me, so I hate you this game, I'm going to kill you.
Or intentional griefing and things like that. So
right. It's just like, okay, so pretty much the third player wins since you're just going to harass me the whole game.
Yeah.
And he's going to do whatever's in his interest to actually win, which is what you should do.
Sure. But no, it seems like the game naturally kind of accommodates for that, and like I said before, I hate house ruling anything. I'm perfectly fine with errata, but just for whatever reason I dislike unofficial variants, but I'm right
with you. I don't like using mods in most things.
But I've been nothing but impressed with this variant. It feels very intuitive, and the way that the cards are worded, I could literally see this being introduced at some point as just an alternative way to play the game.
Yeah, like I think it would be fantastic if a lot of these things kind of get ironed out and settle in, and then maybe next Worlds, like for the league, like they have some kind of league sign up. Where it's not an event, you just challenge people, right?
Sure.
Maybe they do a 3-player challenges like that.
Yeah. Well,
or a side event, say, hey, if you can get 24 people to do whatever.
Right. Well, Justin, thank you so much for your time. I suppose, is there anything else that you'd like to kind of throw out there before we close out the video?
At this point, I have nothing else. I'm just excited for the next cycle and get my hand on the cards that I won't get to use that much.
Sure. Well, I guess I can empathize with the inability to get much play in, but thank you so much for your time, Justin. I look forward to the community response to this video, and have a fantastic evening.
And you too, Mitch.
Well, with our introduction to this multiplayer variant having drawn to a close, I'll just conclude this video by saying thank you once again for watching. Growing this community continues to be of the paramount importance to me, and if a 3-player game variant could contribute to bringing new players to Conquest, then I definitely recommend you experiment with this new method of play and be sure to report back below. So, please take a moment to let me know not just what you thought of this multiplayer variant, but also provide your thoughts and feedback in regard to how it could be improved. What do you think works well, and what might be best subject to change? Still, in any case, if you enjoyed this content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already, or if you are already subscribed, I always encourage you to share this content, as the more eyes there are on these videos, the more exposure there is for Conquest LCG, the more likely it becomes new players might be exposed to this game, like what they see, give it a try, join our community, and of course, all together we continue to send the message to Fantasy Flight Games to continue to develop for this fantastic product. If at any point you'd like to get in touch with me, I'd encourage you to do so through Facebook or on Twitter, and if at any point you feel so inclined to help contribute to my Patreon, I'd be absolutely honored were you to do so on a strictly monthly basis. But once again, thank you so much for watching. I very much appreciate your feedback to this video, and as always, be sure to check back in again soon for ever more Conquest LCG content to come.